The biggest battle we will ever have to face is the battle between you and you. It's the battle of taking your mind to that limit and then breaking through. On the Mindful Experiment podcast, we will share concepts, universal laws, and interviewing individuals who have done just that, who have gone through the dark times and through those moments allowed their light to shine bright. I'm your host, Dr. Vic Manzo, and I want to thank you for listening to the podcast and taking this journey with me as we discover different avenues to break through those limits, expand your reality, and evolve into the person you desire to be. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hey guys, it's Dr. Vic here, and before we jump into the interview, I wanted to share a couple things and then we'll dive right in. But if you haven't checked out my new book, Rediscover Your Greatness, what are you waiting for? Honestly, this book has been awesome. The feedback has been unbelievable. It's only been out for a couple months, and the things that people have shared with me on how it helped influence their life, it's just been awe-inspiring in so many ways. And so if you haven't, go check it out. It's on Amazon and so forth. If you want an autographed copy and you live in the United States, go ahead to empoweryourreality.com and click on new book, and you'll be able to order it there and get it autographed. Also, if you haven't checked out, we have a free week of coaching. We're going to be launching some new programs in the fall, and one of them that we just gave a little teaser on is going to be our 1 week free coaching. You get a video from me every day, some worksheets, and we kind of just help you disconnect from the chaos of the world to help reconnect from where you are. Again, want more information, go to empoweryourreality.com and click on classes. Let's dive in here. Angelo has been a friend of mine. I've known him since I was in grade school. This guy has always been designed for success. I have a huge respect for the guy, for what he has created, what he has done. And I think it's even more magical because we come from the same background. You know, we're both Italian and come from an Italian-American family. We're from the same neighborhood, and we didn't have all the opportunities that many other people had. And for the success of what he has created for himself, and just, it's been awesome. And now to see him take that to the next level and what he's doing, I'm just excited for him to see how it's going to go. So to give you a little bit of a background of Angelo, on October 15th in 2002, Angelo was involved in a hit and run motorcycle accident that changed his life forever. In an instant, he went from being a 20-year-old entrepreneur to someone who was fighting to save his leg and his way of life. After 8 surgeries, 2 months in a hospital bed, 5 months of daily rehab, and the encouraging news from his doctors that any kind of athletics is permanently out of the question, Angelo went deep into a depression. In 2009, he discovered CrossFit, and everything changed once again. He had a new focus. He had a new purpose. He lost 100 pounds. In 2010, Angelo opened up O'Hare CrossFit and the O'Hare CrossFit Harwood Heights, his second gym, in 2015. Angelo has consulted over 400 affiliates worldwide, co-founded Lifestyle Nutrition, is an international speaker on how to succeed as an affiliate owner, while coaching 2 CrossFit Games athletes in 2018. In his free time, Angelo loves to travel, eat great food, and spend time with people closest to him. Angelo's the real deal. He has a very cool story. He'll dive into his issue, the thing that he went through with the motorcycle accident, what he went through, his emotions, and so much more, and then how he took that and went even further, and how he changed his life, used that as a catalyst instead of going into a deeper depression and allowing the doctors to tell him, "Hey, this is what it's going to be," and that's it. Angelo took that to a different level, and he transformed his life from that. So tune in as we jump into this awesome interview I had with Angelo Sisco.
Hey everyone, welcome. Angelo, I want to first say, man, thank you for being on, man. It's a pleasure to have you.
No, my pleasure. So happy to be here.
So we got a lot to talk about. Angelo is a very dynamic individual, as you've heard his bio and everything. And, one of the things he has so many things he's doing right now. One of the things I want to tap into is, hey, man, what's with CrossFit? It has blown up. I know you started early into it before it even got there. And I know I love your approach in CrossFit, because I remember we chatted so many times about the way you want to take it from there. So one of the first questions I want to start out with is, what is like the myth the biggest myth that you see in CrossFit, the misconception that people think of it as?
Sure. So it's a great question. I think CrossFit in a weird way is a lot how people look at religion from the outside. So people may hear a religion and they have a preconceived notion, or they think of something and it automatically goes to a place there. Or if they didn't have a great experience one time doing CrossFit, all CrossFits are created that poorly and things like that. And so I think when you really take time to look under the hood, you have to look at everything in CrossFit gyms is really particular to that gym. There is no governing license of CrossFit as far as you pay for an affiliation. There's certain rules with the use of the name, but how your gym gets run, how your classes get run, how all those things, the programming, your coaching staff, that is all up to that one facility.
I love it. Sounds like chiropractic, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it really is.
Because I'm assuming probably you can line up 100 CrossFit gyms and they'll have their own like unique little approach to it.
For sure.
Gotcha. So then what's your unique approach? Because I was always in love with how you just have this vision of how you have your gym and the message you want to bring to the table to the public.
Yeah. So one of my things with fitness is I don't think it should be painful all the time. I think there's a time and a place for training with high volumes of intensity, both in a conditioning sense and in a strength sense, but also too, there's times when you should be done working out and it shouldn't feel terrible.
I love that. So no pain, no gain, huh?
Yeah, I think it's the craziest thing we have. Like, there's so many misconceptions as people. Like, there's people pumping up their chest now about how they only sleep 4 or 5 hours a night. And I'm like, well, you're walking around like you're drunk. You don't even know that you're drunk. Like, all these things where like it's the most or the hardest. And it's almost like we've been ridden to be a masochist society. Like, we just have to drive ourselves into the ground.
I love that. And I'm a big component of that too, because I was on Instagram and I saw The Rock post something that he like flew. I don't know if you follow The Rock on Instagram stuff, but cool stuff he posts. But there was one that he's like, just got off a plane from China at 3:45 in the morning. I'm going to be doing some work, getting up at 5, and I'm going to get at 5 and just hammer out and hit the gym and just this. And I'm going, dude, what about rest? What about like, hey, just take a moment and just slow it down for a second. And you get a lot of that type of stuff. And it's interesting. So I like that. Nope. It doesn't have to be painful all the time.
It doesn't.
Awesome. What got you into the fitness realm? Because like in chiropractic, we always say like chiropractic, it found you. You didn't go and seek for it. It came to, like in my life, that's how it happened. And I'm assuming it happens in a lot of people's life that it's what you're seeking really seeks you. So how did it seek you?
Sure. So true. This is a deep story, but I'm going to lay it all out. So
awesome.
Being overweight in my family was a very common thing. My father, he was in prison for 11 years and he went to jail. He was 400 pounds. So he's 6'1", 400 pounds. So just close your eyes and you can imagine how big of a man he was. And coming to learn later in his life, one of the main reasons that he became ultra aggressive and almost, I think it was a natural progression to go into that criminal element, was because he was bullied when he was little, because he was fat and he never had anybody to teach him how to even stand up for himself. And so eventually he hit puberty and grew into a bigger, larger man and just allowed that to propel him into being ultra aggressive. And what winds up happening is when you're ultra aggressive, or if somebody says something to you not nice and you're ultra aggressive, it usually means that they're going to stop doing it. And so his behavior got really reinforced with that. Sure. And so he goes to prison. And then throughout my youth, I gained a lot of weight. I just was I don't even know if I was lazy or what, but just I ate poorly and that was part of my life. And so when he went away, right around halfway through his time, he lost about 200 pounds. So he completely changed his life and he found health and fitness and training. And so it was a really big deal that I wasn't going to be fat for him. And I remember being just the topic of our conversations at these prison visits. It's so funny to say because like, it's just like you're sitting at a table in a room, but it was my father being very, strong about me not being fat and my mother making sure that I didn't eat too much or I didn't drink too many Coca-Colas or all these kind of things. So he was really trying to help me from it. And meanwhile, it was just for him trying to mask me from having these instances that he had when he was a kid, because that was his concern. And my father has a certain set of tools. So when I was 7 or 8 years old, it didn't come out as somebody that really cared about me. It was more like, well, this guy just ease up and let me have a Snickers. Right. And so that was most of my youth, being heavy like that. When he came home, when I was 16 and I started working out with him or just going to the gym the same time he did, and I lost a lot of weight, and it was amazing. And, when you're doing anything that is to gain praise from somebody else, that's a short-term solution. It works for a period of time, but if there is no intrinsic motivation, you can't keep chasing the carrot.
That's true.
And so I got a little bit heavier in my early 20s. When I was 20, turned 21, right about to turn 21, I was in a motorcycle accident. I was hit by a landscaping truck. I have 10 screws and a plate in my foot now. And I was in the hospital for 2 months and rehab for 5 months. So I gained some weight during that period. Also, too, when your foot's ripped off your ankle, people aren't really telling you how much great things you're going to accomplish physically. So that just led me down a path of getting much, much heavier. And right on during that times, too, my parents divorced in my mid to early to mid 20s. And that was a real big shocker for me at the time as well. I took it to heart very much because I had this idea of identity that my parents were married, even though my father was in prison for 11 years and we stayed together. And I had a lot of pride in that, and that meant a lot to me. And I thought that was who I was. And when he left, a lot of things about how the pedestal for him, I tell people that's the moment that he became my father and not daddy. The pedestal came down, and I just gained weight for maybe a 6-month period. It was a real tough time for my family, for my mother, for my sister, for all of us. And right around 2008, I just was tired of being fat, just tired of feeling that way. When you're overweight, buying clothes is like getting a punishment. It's one of the worst times ever. The only time you feel good is when you're in sweats. At least for me.
I hear you.
And so 2008, I started doing some research, and I saw the movie 300, and I was like, man, how did these guys get in such great shape? Come to find out that they trained at a gym called Jim Jones in Utah, in Salt Lake City, Utah. Started digging up everything I can about Jim Jones. And then I found out that at one time Jim Jones was a part of this thing called CrossFit. I'm like, man, well, what's this CrossFit thing? And just started following CrossFit.com. And I was like, I'm going to do this. And so January 5th, 2009, I did my first CrossFit workout. It was by myself at the Civic Center in Melrose. I walked home crying because of how terrible out of shape I was. I gave myself like a fitness test to baseline, and I think I was so out of breath I could only do maybe 5 burpees in a minute. It was absolutely terrible. Fast forward 7 months, I lost 95 pounds.
Awesome.
And life was looking much different then. I had another business at the time, and I was like, man, I just want to train people because this is so fun that I could share this with. And so I was doing it for free at first. And I was like, man, can I really make this a career? And so I walked into, so one of my crowning achievements for fat guy status was to go run at North Avenue Beach with my shirt off. I don't know why that became a thing in my head, but to me, going there, running from North Avenue Beach to Navy Pier with your shirt off, enjoying the sun was the epitome of showing how much you loved your physique and how proud you were. And there was an export actually, which is like a Globo gym right on North and Wells. And I was like, man, I'm just going to walk in here and see if I could get a job here. And sure enough, I didn't have an interview, but I met with the manager and they hired me that day.
Awesome.
And it was amazing. I was so excited I was going to be this personal trainer and do all this stuff. Come to find out, they wanted me to go up to people on treadmills and try to push a bunch of supplements and stuff that I didn't believe. So I worked there for 3 days. And it didn't work out. I knew it immediately that it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this on my own the way I want to do it. And I think I just set out a group text message on my phone. And I was like, man, if I could just get 10 clients at the end of this month to train with me, I'm not doing this for the money. I already have something that's holding me over financially. I just want to have a consistent book of business. And so at the end of July of 2009, we started training people outside the park at a local civic center. And then September of 2009, it got chilly. So I rented the racquetball court space, and I had that for 14 months, and then I opened the gym. So that was the journey to getting all this.
That's awesome, man. I didn't know that. I mean, but I know Angelo growing up as a kid, so it's kind of cool to hear this story. Really, really powerful story. How did, so you went, there's a lot of stuff there, man. There's a lot of haha moments. When you reflect back, how does it how grateful are you for some of those moments? How great? Because I know at the time it always sucks.
Sure.
But then when you look back, you're kind of like, wow, okay, I'm happy that I went through something like that. Or I'm happy and I know it sucks sometimes, but it's like, but you look, hey, did you do that at all? Have you ever like look back and go, man, God, thank you for this, or thank you for that, or what was your experience on that?
Absolutely. So the way I'm saying this story to you guys now is a culmination of a lot of realizations and acceptance. If you would have asked me this story even 4 years ago, I would have probably been MFing my father more than singing his praise. So a lot of it is a lot of reflection and understanding and trying to look through of what all these messages really meant. And so like this thing with my father, like when you look at this now, a man just doing the best he can and doing with what he knows how to do. And he goes to prison for 11 years. And why wouldn't he be super stressed out about his son not having a male role model? It makes complete sense. Right. But when it comes out as being just mad at you or you not, him not telling you that you're enough, he's just concerned.
I think sometimes for men, I mean, it could be for women too, but as our backgrounds as being Italian, I think having your dad just saying, hey, you're enough, and knowing that is words that they could transform your life. Would you agree?
100%.
So it's good stuff, man. It's really, there's a lot of passion behind that. And I know that stimulates why you're so successful at what you do. You got to go through, as I talk about here all the time, like the dark times of what you go through, man. That's what brings the greatest light and the joy of it all. And you're also a coach too. So you're doing coaching with box gyms, right?
Yeah.
And you have 2 athletes showing up at the CrossFit Games. Let's talk a little bit about that experience. How much is, CrossFit, when you go to the games, it's very conditioning. You're stressing the heck out of the body. Yep. You're going to levels that you never thought you can get to. And you have to like look at them and you have to see them in their potential. Like what's the viewpoint, how you work with an athlete? How do you like help them get to that elite status?
Yeah. So it's very interesting too, because these two, a lot of coaches in CrossFit may take an athlete on when they're already one stage away from the games or stuff like that. But both of these athletes I started working with before any of these things. So we've had a journey from them just sitting across from me at a desk saying they want to go to the CrossFit Games to actually everything that goes into it. The first thing is that I really believe there's certain little physical aspects that you may be able to tell with people, age and height and stuff like that. But you really need to put time in with people. I would say a good 6-month test to see what their work ethic is like. And what their mental resilience is. I think that if you could enjoy doing whatever you're doing, you have a better chance of achieving it.
Would you say it's a lot more mental than it is more of the physical side of things?
No doubt.
Or was it? Because I know there was a research study I was reading a couple weeks ago about how if you think you can't do something, like if you're working out, and let's say you're getting to your end point, and if you think you're done there, you'll shut down. But they've done studies where they've worked on people's minds that like activate like if you think you can push further, you'll actually be able to the muscles will take on another load per se to take you to that level. What are some of the, like when we got the box gym stuff that you're coaching, what's some of the things when you're coaching with someone, what are the I don't want to say difficult things, but some of the things you see are mental blocks?
Yeah, I think people choose goals that would approve getting approval from other people, or people pick goals. Angelo's successful. I just want to do everything Angelo does. And then they come to find out that both of those aren't native to them. And so they wonder why they can't figure them out. And it's just because they're not theirs.
So true. I see that even with being a chiropractor. People want to get the healthiest they can be, and they're like, "I see you're very regimented in what you do," and I'm like, "Yeah, you can do this." And then when they start doing work, they're like, "Yeah, no, that's not for me." And then I'm assuming you do the same thing, where you're kind of like, "All right, let's figure out what is for you. Sure. Let's figure out that process behind it."
Yeah, it's the beginning stage for anybody I work with.
I love it. Great question to ask. I love this question. Tell me something that you think is true that no one else agrees with you on. Or that you know is true, not that you think.
That I know is true?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to throw this out. This might cause a little bit of heck.
Yeah, let's go. Who cares?
I honestly think having Donald Trump as the president right now is the best thing for America. And here's why.
I love this. Go ahead.
I had this conversation the other day. African American, white people, Italian, poor people, Hispanic, and that we all finally have one thing we have in common, is that we don't approve of him. and his antics. So for the first time ever in history, we are all united by one thing that is undeniable.
Never thought of that.
And I really think that like we should all wake up and go, hey, keep being the way you are because it's going to bring us closer.
Never saw it that way.
And so I really think that we all have one thing in common. We're united in one way. And when you look in history at like things like the apartheid coming down, they all sat around and all agreed that they were a part of this mess. And that's how it all started to change. And I really believe that like we needed this guy so people weren't like, oh, maybe him, Obama. No, we all think he's nuts.
I like it.
And we're finally like all in agreement on this. And I think it's like the one time in America's history where we have that one bond.
That's true. I know on Facebook, that's all I ever see is hate stuff on him. And the news is, I don't think they ever said anything nice about Trump since he's been in as a president. That's a unique perspective.
So that's like my crazy thing. Some people look at me like I'm nuts, but when you really think about it, we're the majority, not all of us. Obviously he won, but the majority of people are on this side, and like the power is going to come to the people that we're all together.
That is such a unique perspective. I like that. I'm gonna definitely. I could see where you're coming from drastically on there, because again, like I said, there is a lot of hate being shared out there, and it's one of those things. I always say that, like, you know, the people. It's the power of the people, right? We always say that. Well, it's where the people are is what creates the public figure that we have in front of us, and it's just because of the average of where we are and what we need at this time. Mm-hmm. And so I always never get upset or aggravated with who's president, because I'm always like, that's what we need.
Yep.
It's just where we are at this time. Change ourselves, we change that.
For sure.
I love that. It's awesome. Want to shift gears here a little bit and dive into some other stuff. Like, what's the, because you went through a lot of stuff in that story you shared with us. I agree, you opening up and sharing that with us. What's like a book that has like helped you in that journey, or just a book in general that like kind of transformed your life?
Oh my goodness, there's so many good books.
And you could choose different categories in each too, because I know, like for me, it's always one of those things where I'm like, yeah, if it was in this industry, it'd be this. If it was this, it was this. But if there's one that you can say,
Marcus Aurelius' Meditations is my favorite book ever.
Cool.
And the reason I've read it multiple times, and the reason I am such a big fan of it is a lot of people write books about certain topics and things like that, and being this way. And this man was the ruler of what was known as the earth. And he had that view on things where he could have abused anything that he wanted 110%, and nobody even would have said no. And it would have been like approved. And I think to be able to be in such a high place and be able to be that reflective and actually honor your words is like such an admirable way to be. Because I think success brings so many things out of people. And if you could keep yourself in check when you're at your best, it's the most important thing.
Couldn't agree with you more. It's one of those things. Would you say he kept his ego in check? He kept it out of the way so that it wouldn't interfere with things?
Yeah.
Are you a big Gladiator fan?
Yeah.
For the movie?
Like that.
Is that one of your top like 5 or anything like that?
It's like in a top 10 for me. I think it's a wonderful story. But like, I definitely think like just him being that wise. And that's why when you read those words, to me, that's somebody's journal, that he was just writing this stuff down at night to make sure that he wouldn't go abuse his power. Like, how amazing.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
It's one book. I mean, I've heard a lot of his work, and I like him for what he has done. But that'll be a book I'll have to check out.
Yeah.
Very cool. Let's take a look here. One of the things I like giving advice, because you're very well versed in what you do, and I know you work on yourself consistently on all levels, physically, mentally, and spiritually. What is like advice you would give to somebody who, it could be a graduating student, it could just be someone who has a vision and a goal? Like, what would some words of advice you would give them?
Wow. If they were just about to embark on a journey, or just in general? Just
embark on a journey, or just graduated college. It could be either or. Whatever works easier for you.
Yeah, this is a new revelation for me, and I wish I knew this earlier. I think the idea of working hard has been ingrained in me for many years, and ingrained in a lot of people, and I think it is the most backwards way to achieve high results. And I think you should work easy, and it doesn't have to be like, you could work 12 hours a day and you could work easy. That's what I mean. It's just like doing the things that you're really good at, finding out what they are. My biggest thing too is I resented the things I was good at because they were so easy. So I thought, because I believe that.
I totally
so like
that.
Think about what you're really good at. It should fill you with energy. It should feel really easy to do, and do your absolute best to only be able to do those things. And I understand for a lot of people in early ventures, they have to do a lot of things to get to a certain point or because of resources, but you should be focused on how can you make your life only about doing the thing that you get the most return on, because that is going to be able to take care of everything else.
I love it. Where do you think, like, because I've been raised in a way where, initially I went through the kind of same thing you said, like hard work, bust your ass, just go, and eventually things will just work out for you. When did that like epiphany happen for you to where you were like, I don't have to do it as hard? There's a different path. Because in universal laws, they call it the path of least resistance. Mm-hmm. And that's the path you actually want to take, because that's the one. Some people say that's the weak path. You ever heard of that before?
Yep.
Like, oh, don't go there. That's the easy path. Why don't you got to go to the most resistant path. But when that moment happened for you, when did that click for you?
A couple years ago. Where I would maybe 2015, I was fortunate enough where I had the resources and the staff to like actually travel and meet successful entrepreneurs and stuff. And we would talk about our days, and they would have what I would think was the coolest days. They did what they wanted. They didn't, like, one guy was like, I take no meetings before 12 p.m. because that's my creative time. I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? And like this, like, it blew my mind that these guys were accomplishing all these things, and they were living like this life where they were just filled doing the things that they're really good at. They all worked, they worked very focused. I don't think working hard is a great word. I think working focused is a better way to explain it, but like being around them and seeing that. And so for me, getting out of my little bubble and getting around people that I wanted to be like really helped me realize all that.
Gotcha. And learning from them, like when you saw their perfect day, did it help you accumulate what your perfect day is?
Yes.
So what does that look like for you?
So I would venture to say that right now I live a very perfect day life. So every single day is blocked out to a certain category of my goals and what I'm trying to do. So, Monday's theme is everything that has to do with internal stuff with the gym. So I meet with the staff and just basically making sure that everybody knows what they're going to be focused on this week. And that's all I do. If I get an email about programming, if I get an email about business coaching, I don't tend to it.
Love it.
Unless it's completely urgent. And everybody that works with me knows to put urgent in a subject line or I won't get to it. And I do that with my week. And what I also do too is I leave 2.5 usually hours in the morning to do self-care stuff. I have a Wim Hof breathing practice. I journal, and I'll get my first workout done in the morning.
Love it. And since you've been doing that, have you noticed you're getting more done than what you used to do 3-5 years ago before you made that realization? It's
a double-edged sword, because the funny thing is I find myself not trying to make myself busy either, though. I get the necessity things done. So it's not like now it's not that I wake up on Mondays and go, okay, OCF internal stuff. I have a list of 20 things to do. It's more like the list is much less and it's more deliberate and present with that smaller list.
Love it. Yeah. And that's what I studied Charles Branson and those guys. And, that's funny how they live that lifestyle. It's like, what is the little things I have to do today to move the needle closer to where I want to be? Yep. And that's how they focus on. So, and even if they get it done in 2 hours, they're done for the day. Done. And it's just like, that was foreign to me. And in my revelation, it's been coming more in the last year and a half, where it's just like, all right, how much less can I do to maximize my gain and my impact of what I can do? Mm-hmm. I love that, man. So we talked a little bit about CrossFit and your journey and how you got there. We talked about the coaching and that, and you're doing awesome. We got the 2 athletes, man. I'm really excited for you. I can't wait to keep me posted on what's happening there. I know they're going to do well because they're under your supervision. I know that. It should
be exciting.
I've known you for a long time. I know you're the real deal when it comes to things. Let's talk about you. You started this new venture, and I'm in love with your new venture, Alpha Hippie. Where'd that come from?
Yeah.
How'd that begin?
So Alpha Hippie is... here we go. The Alpha Hippie came from my spiritual journey. So in 2014-ish, I would say the gym was at a plateau, and it was our first plateau. So, I mean, I was very fortunate. I had exponential growth for the first 4 years of me opening the gym.
Love that.
I think, timing and being an early adopter of CrossFit, I was the first one. And so for whatever reason, blind luck or whatever you want to call it. And it was the first time I had a real plateau. And I spent maybe 3 to 6 months just being a complete victim and blaming my team, blaming everybody else, like anything that you could possibly think of, I was blaming. And I just started reading some books about like real successful people and started learning about this thing called EQ, like emotional intelligence. And I was like, what is this stuff? And that was my first, I would say emotional intelligence is the way to say mindfulness without freaking anybody out. And so I started diving into there and taking tests and found out that I was not really good at self-awareness, this thing called self-awareness. I'm like, what is this? And, I just started diving really deep into that. I started reading books about, consciousness and Buddhism and really learning about myself and really learning about successful people that went through journeys. And then I ventured off into Southern California, and I'd go to retreats for 3 or 4 days, and I would go to learn about how my parents' upbringing made me the man I am, or made me think of the things I have, and all these beliefs that I had in my brain to be these tried and true things that were just choices. And just really started from there. And obviously over the last 3.5 years, things have drastically changed with me personally. I mean, I have the gym, I got married. I mean, there's a lot of amazing things. I've had a lot of accolades as far as my career through this. And I started to realize, like, how amazing is this, is that the only limiter you have is you, and you could fix it anytime. I think it's like a cheat code to any game like you want. It's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I just started doing that. I go on 1 or 2 retreats a year. I'm always kind of spending time digging into that stuff, and like the Wim Hof and the breathing practices kind of came from there and all that. And, one day I was having a conversation with somebody from here, because a lot of the stuff that is native to my Melrose Park upbringing, this is complete opposite, having these practices. And like, what do you mean you lay on the floor and you breathe for 30 minutes? What's wrong with you? Like a lot of stuff like that. And so one day I was explaining to somebody something that, like, I went to this retreat, and I said, well, and I explained it to him, and he like said something smart. And I go, well, you don't understand because you're not an alpha hippie. And I was like, wow, wouldn't it be great if I had a shirt that said alpha hippie? Because that's what I am. And I Googled it, and they didn't make any shirts. And I said, well, I'm going to make it. And I just made up a design, went to a designer, and we made the design that's for alpha hippie. And I was like, cool. So I'm going to make this shirt. And I'm like, well, why would I only make like 1 or 2 of them? I'm going to make a whole bunch of them and pass them out to people. So I printed out like 100 shirts, and I would just send them to people that I liked and told them if they felt like they were aligned with being an alpha hippie to send me a picture of them wearing it. And I want to post it. So I started it that way. And, it was just like a fun little thing. I went to Costa Rica in February. I lived in an eco village for a week, and then I spent 3 days at Envision Fest, and I just brought a duffel bag of shirts and left them there for people. I have no idea who has them now.
You're creating a movement.
And and so I was like, man, this is so cool. And then I started thinking about what motivates me or what gives me energy. And when I go to these seminars or these retreats, I come back so inspired. And very, very rarely is it from the content that gets presented. It's more from the conversations I have with people. And I was like, man, I have these conversations with these people. I come back, I have this energy that I can never imagine. Like, how can I do this at home? And I was like, man, why wouldn't I just do a podcast? I'll sit down with somebody, we'll jam for an hour or 2. I'll get my fix. They'll get what they need out of it. I'll learn some cool stuff, and we'll just keep rolling. And so the Alpha Hippie podcast launched the beginning of, June 20th, I think. We launched like right around that time. And now the podcast is just all about like celebrating people that inspire me. I mean, this is a very, very selfish mission. I have to be truthful. And if somebody else benefits from it, I am more than gracious and very happy that they do. But this is all about just me finding an outlet to serve me. And also too, I like being creative. I like conversations, and I love fun things like that. And I want to have an outlet for that instead of just making it where I need to be a businessman all the time.
I love it, man. Yeah, that's awesome. Great journey on that. And you're speaking right to me, man. It's like, well, why am I creating a mindful experiment? It's like the same. And I think we were talking that before we got on the podcast a little bit on that. These retreats, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about them, I've done a lot of spiritual retreats in my life. And I think we talked previously before, Sweat Lodge.
Yes.
Right. You did those. Well, if you don't mind sharing, just what was like that experience? Because some people hear these things and they're like, what the heck's a sweat lodge?
Yeah.
What's that all about? And I always look at these things like tools to help you become even more aware, to dive deeper into yourself, because I think the more deeper you go into yourself, the more you act, that's where the fruit comes out. And the more you start paying attention to that more, as you've been sharing your story. So if you don't mind, share an experience.
Yeah. So we were in Costa Rica and I was having dinner and somebody was like, yeah, we're going to do a sweat lodge tonight. I'm like, well, I want to do it. And the reason I usually take to any sort of spiritual practices that are physical is because I am so in love with fitness and what physical brings out of you. I personally believe you watch somebody exercise for 20 minutes, you don't need to have a conversation with them. You'll find out plenty about them.
Yeah, it's true.
And
so true.
And to me, doing the sweat lodge it was just another test to really see where you were. And it's not a test where it's good or bad. I think that I just want people to know that it's just about seeing where you're at. And then it gives you a barometer or data if you want to make a change. Like 5 people walked out of that sweat lodge because they couldn't stand being in there. And this is a 2.5 hour experience. There's 4 rounds of prayer. They bring in hot stones that are in a burning fire every round, and you can't get out of this little hut. Like you're sitting in there and you do prayers. You pray for earth. You pray for the people you love. You pray for yourself. You celebrate. It's a very big experience, but there's also something about just sitting there and learning how to keep yourself calm while you're just getting heat thrown at your face over and over again. And I think that that stuff can be trained. It's not I don't think it's a natural position. Maybe some people could do it naturally, but like you can build up a tolerance to these certain things. And so the sweat lodge for me was just a way to see that. Like, I think it's beautiful to test yourself and not beat yourself up either way about it, but just to throw yourself in the arena and just see where you're at. And so that's why I do that stuff.
Love it, man. Yeah, sweat lodges are great. I actually never have done one. That's one thing I haven't done yet.
Yes.
I actually have a patient who's a Native American, and he does them 6 times a year. And he just did one like a couple weeks ago. And he's always like, you let me know when you're ready. I'm like, oh, that's coming down my path. I'm going to eventually venture that way and check them out. But I know they're intense and a lot of awakening from what I hear. A lot of spiritual truth, a lot of some people get messages that come to them when you get into that state. But everyone's different. Everyone has that experience. I love it. And you were talking about mindset and how, it's something you have to work towards, right? Mm-hmm. It's really when you're in there, you have that heat coming and it's like your brain is going to keep saying to you, right? I don't know if you tell me if you had this experience. I know a lot of people who've done sweat lodges had this where you have the heat just keep coming. And you're like, your brain's like, hey, it's hard to breathe. Can't do this. And it's trying to let you know, like, hey, no, we can't go there. It's not good. And did you have those struggles at all when you did it?
For sure.
When you broke that barrier, though, what was on the other side?
Peace. It's very calm. Once you could get past the erratic thoughts and just be like, you're fine. Just breathe really calm. You're good. And then you'll just slow down your breathing, and all of a sudden you'll go to another place and you'll get out of yourself.
And I think that's where the gift comes. Because then is it more, would you say trusting yourself? Because, right, you're trying to control your situation. That's where I think the fear comes from. Sure. And then, and if I'm putting words in your mouth, let me know. Okay. But then you have that aspect of your life where then you're like, I just got to let go. Yeah. Got to stop resisting.
I think that what I took from it the most is in the face of a lot of turbulence is you need to stay calm. I think it's very easy to get faced with even day-to-day things. One thing happens, another thing happens, somebody cuts you off, this and that. All of a sudden, you're yelling at your wife.
We got to watch out with that stuff.
Yeah, and stuff like that. And so for me, it was letting yourself get hit in the face with something that's really uncomfortable and learning how to calm yourself down from it and not be attached to it at all.
How much has, because I know you say you continue practicing this, how much has Wim Hof breathing helped you in that process?
This is so funny. I told this to somebody this morning. So when I wake up, I have a tendency to, and I still struggle with this, is I want to just do stuff. I want to do work. I'm thinking about my day and all this stuff. And I almost wake up at a 7 out of 10 as far as anxiety and focus, all that.
Totally can relate.
And doing the Wim Hof breathing brings me down to a 3.
Love it.
And that's the best way to say it is I just downshift myself and then I go and start my day.
I have mentors, like one of my mentors will be like, in the morning, you want to get in that power state, right? That really high energy power state. And I could tell you're like this already. You probably wake up and like you said, 7 out of 10, you're already there. The anxiety, you want to get going. You want to get stuff going. And I always tell them, no, for me, I need to just get me in that centered peace state. And then from there, I can get on with my day.
Absolutely.
I love it. How long have you been practicing Wim Hof now?
I just finished a 30-day, 30 minutes a day challenge. I've done it on and off before. Like I've done some Kundalini stuff, but like I've never done it 30 minutes straight every day.
I love it. So is it breathing in and out for 30 minutes straight?
So 30 minutes so this is what the Wim Hof breathing cycle is you do 30 power breaths that look something or hear something like this. At the 30th breath, you hold out the exhale as long as you can. And that's a test in itself just to get comfortable. And then as soon as you're done with that, you do a big inhale and you hold that for 15 seconds. That's one round. And I repeat those rounds for 30 minutes.
Gotcha. Okay. You ever get the lightheadedness and dizziness?
Sure. I get tingly in my fingers. That's how I know I'm going there. Like when my fingers, when I settle down and feel different feelings in my fingers.
There was, I've done practices where shamanic breath, and there's variations to that. But there's one where you do just in and out like that as fast for like over an hour.
It's crazy.
And there's times where you go pure numb, like numb everything. And I'm just like, but there's that, again, trusting the process. Yeah, things are going numb, but just go with it. Let the mind just let go. And then eventually when you go, it's like, then there's that I call it the gap. Mm-hmm. Actually, I think Deepak Chopra actually coined that term. But it's where that physical, spiritual, and then there's that peace zone right in the middle. Right. So I love it. How has, since you've been doing the work, since you've done this 30 days and 30 minutes, who was Angelo before those 30 days and how about now? Is there a change?
Yeah.
What have you noticed the most?
I feel like I could, this is just a physical thing. When I'm working out, I feel like I could breathe better. I could access better breathing there, which also carries over into your life. Like when you practice breathing and then you go and have a situation, your body just knows how to respond to it better. Not that I haven't had any sort of temper or anything like that, but it just the intensity of any sort of outburst or how things would come out that I would regret later has been much improved.
I love that. And that's the whole thing. Like, and unfortunately in America, we don't focus on our breath a lot. It's more of just go, and dismiss and not really pay attention. We're like in Hindu practices, they're all about the breath. And if you're stressed, take a breath, slow down, take some breaths. And even neurologically, they figured out like, the Wim Hof power breaths. Mm-hmm. If you do 6 of those, you actually reset your nervous system to actually knock out whatever that feeling you had, anxiety, fear, whatever, neurologically it will break down from that.
That's crazy. That's awesome.
So it's really cool stuff. I love that. So Alpha Hippie, that's leading you that way. What's your vision? I know you're talking like it's just about you really in the end of the day and just podcasts and just having great conversations. What's your vision for that?
Yeah, this is a great question. So I've been going back and forth about this, what it would be. So right now I'm just doing podcasts and I'm learning and I'm sharing with people. And I'd like to just develop a tribe that is focused on being present and being better and being more mindful. I really don't have a business strategy for this yet. I just really want to see if people are vibing off the things that I'm vibing about. I can't help but think down the road that this may gravitate more towards men. I'm extremely passionate about being a good man. It matters to me very much. And so I couldn't help but think that would be something that this would go as I would develop a tribe and have something where we would just work on being all embodying better men, where we have every feeling that is available to us. And then that we would be better everything, better husbands, fathers, everything.
I love that, man. So when you say being better men, what's that does that look like? I mean, you said at the end they're better fathers and stuff. Is there anything else on that?
Yes.
Is there like a core value system that you kind of look at or you're projecting that you see?
Sure. I take a lot of pride in this, and it's something I focus on, is your actions should meet your words and your actions should be the same. And if at the end of the day, that's all we focused on, I think everything would take care of itself. And so that's for me, like, some people say it's like living in integrity, but it really means a lot to me. If you say you're going to do something, you say you're going to show up, and I'm not saying that you can't change your mind either. I'm not that hardcore, but I'm just saying, like, if you say that you want to do something, you say it out loud and then you go do what you got to do to make it work. And that's very important, more important than the result.
I love that. Commit and go, right? Just, this is what you want and go with it. A lot of times in society, we do, obviously it's the opposite of that. Majority of people say, this is what I really want to do. And then here is their actions and here's the outcome. And it's always like, where did you miss the mark? And I don't get me wrong, we all get lost, right? I know I have, and I know I always tell my wife, I'm like, I will get lost again eventually. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. Mm-hmm. Just hopefully I catch it like in the first hour rather than 2 months down the road, right? Great stuff here. One last question I was going to ask is, if you had, and I think you mentioned this already in there, and I wanted to ask this question. It's one of my last questions I love asking, is that if you had to send a message to yourself 10 years ago, what would you tell Angelo then from where you are now?
Oh, that's a good one. I really believe that we already for me, I already had the answers back then. I just didn't need to be seeking so much externally. So as for me, like, the first thing I would tell myself is to relax, and you got it, and to be confident and happy with that. So
is it like, as Jay-Z said one time, can't believe I'm quoting Jay-Z, but it is a good statement. He said, somebody asked him, what is one thing you wish you did sooner in your life? Would you say it was like believing in yourself? Having that faith?
Yeah, I would say believing in myself. Yeah. I think I grew up with not enough. I'm not enough. I don't feel like I'm enough, or you're not good enough, or you're not enough man. You're not enough this. And like, if I could tell myself when I was 24 that I was enough and really believed it, that would be the greatest gift I could give myself.
Love it, man. It's funny how life's parallel. I know we grew up in the same town, but it's interesting because that was has been my biggest battle, is how do you show yourself that you are enough? Like I always think of that question. I always look back going, yeah, I think just believe in yourself, man. Just go and do it. Forget what everyone else says. Forget what how people think and just do it. Yeah. Pretty cool stuff, man. So we got CrossFit coaching, Alpha Hippie, all that good stuff. Tell us, how do people get a hold of you? How do they want to connect with you?
Yeah, sure. So on social media, Alpha Hippie is at the Alpha Hippie on Instagram. The podcast is on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Google. You can check it out there. I'm on Facebook and Instagram as Angelo Sisco, and the gym is O'Hare CrossFit on all major channels and O'HareCrossFit.com.
Awesome, man. And we'll have those in the notes for you guys and all the good stuff there. So definitely check it out. I highly recommend. Check out the podcast. I think it was episode 4.
Yep.
4? I heard it's a good one, but they're all good. I've been listening to them myself, so they're very good. Check them out. I highly recommend it. Angelo, thanks for being on, man. This was awesome. I'm definitely have you on again more. We got some good stuff to dive into. I like to get into more of the hippie side of the alpha side, because I know we both grew up in the same society where we both grew up with a mentality of alpha, do, go, right? I'd love to have you back on, and we'll definitely hammer out some of that hippie stuff.
Anytime, brother.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. For past shows, please visit www.empoweryourreality.com. I hope this show inspired you and added to your life to help you on the journey to rediscover who you really are. To connect with us on Facebook, please visit www.facebook.com/Dr. Vic Manzo. Check us out on Twitter. The handle is Dr. Vic21. Follow us on Instagram, www.instagram.com/Dr. Vic Manzo. If you were inspired by the podcast, pay it forward by sharing it with someone who you know can benefit from it. Thank you again for listening to the Mindful Experiment podcast, sharing paths to help you rediscover your infinite potential.